Welcome to FoxTales Movie Club. I'm Sebastian Fox.
And I'm Tony Sherman. Each video we take a chosen movie and lead a discussion on our thoughts and opinions.
We will be getting into the character, plot, and technical achievements with no regard for spoilers.
So if you haven't seen this movie and don't want to hear said spoilers, you have been warned.
Also, stick around to the end to hear the topic for the next video.
Today's movie is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you live,
Right.
was a movie released in 2001, directed by Christopher Columbus, and actually Chris Columbus. I wrote his full name here for some reason.
Does he go by Christopher Columbus, I wonder?
No, he doesn't. I don't know why I wrote Christopher Columbus. Directed by Chris Columbus and composed by John Williams, starring Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, Robbie Coltrane, Richard Harris, and a bunch of other British actors.
So many people in this movie, especially considering it's set in a school. So it's all these different classmates and teachers, but then there's also all these different extras that you see in the background but never really learn anything about, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, I would say that this is probably my first time getting into Harry Potter. I've kind of read some of the books in the past, and I've kind of seen little bits and pieces of the movies, but this is my first time really actually sitting down and watching it. So it's been kind of an interesting experience watching this series, this film series that is so very popularized and so well known in certain circles. So it's been kind of an interesting thing seeing it for the first time, starting right here at the very beginning.
Yeah, I have read the books a couple times and seen the movies a few times.
Right.
Actually saw the movies first.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. But
Yeah. So it's interesting because I know certain things about the Hogwarts universe and the setting, and know certain things about different characters, and even characters that haven't been introduced in Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone just yet, but still don't really know how they're connected to the story. So it's interesting to go into it with that kind of mindset of, I know these things that have happened, but how do we get there is kind of where I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what are the pieces that build up to some of these different events. And also knowing that there's all these things that are going on in this world behind the scenes that I have questions about and won't have an answer to until maybe several movies down the line, or books down the line, if we end up getting into some of the material in the books. One of the first things that I noticed when Dumbledore first walks into frame and we see these homes that he's going to be dropping little baby Harry off at, it was kind of interesting that I got this feeling of it being a set where things felt off, just in that scene, and it felt almost kind of like Truman Show-esque, where he grabs the light from some of the lampposts, but everything still stayed very well lit and bright, and so things just had kind of an off-putting kind of sense at that very beginning. Whether that was intentional or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, it definitely helps with the mystical feel that the whole movie is going for.
Yeah.
Which I feel like this movie, or these series of movies, really did a very good job of making this world feel magical.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And going into the title, I think is maybe something that can give us a little bit of insight there, because originally it was Philosopher's Stone, and then for whatever reason, they changed it to Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah, in the U.S. they changed it.
Yeah, in the U.S. And I don't know if that's because Philosopher's Stone is a more British European kind of legend that maybe they thought Americans wouldn't be as familiar with it, or if they thought maybe Americans are going to associate philosopher with like a learned person, someone who's searching for knowledge, versus this, like you said, magical, mystical kind of feel with sorcerer, which has a little bit more of that feel to it. So maybe that's part of the reason. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Yeah. Though I did have the question for you about when they mentioned Philosopher's Stone in the movie that we watched, they used Sorcerer's Stone. But when I looked it up, they actually shot the scenes more than once.
Right.
Once with them saying Sorcerer's Stone and once with them saying Philosopher's Stone.
Interesting.
So yeah, they actually had to have two different scenes, two different movies that have the different phrasing based off of which title they went with. So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit for how just changing one thing can impact other aspects of the movie.
Yeah. It actually, this week I'd gone back and I listened to the book on Audible.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really mean to listen to the whole thing, but ended up getting through the
It
entire
happens,
thing in a week.
yeah.
So, but I noticed they had actually changed at least one other thing in the book where they were comparing Quidditch to football or soccer.
Sure.
And in the original version, it would always be football. But for some reason, it was called soccer in those books.
Interesting.
So it's interesting that they changed more.
Yeah. So again, a difference between like this European British English versus the American English version. But yeah, that is interesting things how those little pieces can change to make it more comfortable maybe for the audience. Yeah.
So in watching this movie again, I had forgotten how long it was.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was under 2 hours, but it's like 2.5
right.
hours.
Yeah.
Watching it at the beginning feels very slow. Like it kind of takes its time in building up first the Muggle world, just like him with his
the Dursleys.
Dursleys, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then just slowly introducing these magical elements, but it really shows.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to me that it starts off with them with Dumbledore and what's the other lady's name? McGonagall. That's right. For some reason, I was thinking Minerva. I was like, that's...
Minerva McGonagall.
Okay. So I was right. Okay. That's what I was remembering. Okay. So dropping off the child and Hagrid shows up, and it's someone that they know will take care of this baby, but it seems as if they don't really give very much information to this family. They just kind of like drop off the baby and leave. But watching the Dursleys interact with Harry Potter and how they treat him, it's clear that they know something more than just, oh, this is some baby that was that they then know is the wife's sister's son, her nephew. So they do realize that there is this kind of magical element, but they try to keep that hidden from Harry. And it's interesting to me how, I guess, what they could have done to like kept that hidden up to that point in his life, because they talk about these magical powers starting with these like emotional changes, and him interacting with the snake at that zoo, and we have some of those magical elements starting to take place. But maybe there were points in time where stuff like that had happened before what we see in the movie, because Hagrid asks him about that and says, did you ever have things that happened that you couldn't explain? So we see that maybe Harry could have been picking up on some of these elements and just had no explanation, no way to understand or comprehend what exactly was happening through those magical changes.
Yeah.
But it was also kind of a shock to me as to why the Dursleys were so cruel to Harry. I mean, if they were wanting to keep him from going into this magic world and being connected with magic, if they just treated him as like a normal person, he might never have had any of that pop up. But of course, then where would the story have gone if that were the case, right?
Yeah, I think the Dursleys are very interesting characters of just very set in their ways.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot to there's a lot of questions that can kind of come up around them about where they're coming from and what they really believe in.
Right. Yeah, because the mother mentions her sister being a witch, and so it almost seems like there's a little bit of like a sibling rivalry that she was able to become this great witch and I'm just a normal human, and so like this idea of, well, I don't want anything to do with magic because it's something that I was never able to do. So it seems as if maybe there's a little bit of that in the background of those characters that we don't fully flesh out or fully understand based off of what the movie tells us. So yeah, there's definitely more to the Dursleys than we see, at least in this movie, I would assume.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the letter that Harry receives from Hogwarts being addressed to the cupboard under the stairs?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know exactly how the Wizarding World knows where he lives.
Where his room,
yeah.
if you can call it a room, where he stays.
Yeah, and then in the book when Vernon takes him away and he starts living in other places, or he starts just being in other places, the letters come to him and they're addressed to like a hotel that he's staying at, or this rock that they end up on at the end in the middle of the sea.
Okay.
So it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
They know exactly.
Right. They know exactly where he is all these times, and are just kind of comfortable with the fact that the Dursleys are treating him pretty horribly, but that's Muggles. That's how they are. Maybe.
Yeah, that one they do go a little bit more into why they leave him with the Dursleys later. So
okay, so something to look forward to in future movies or in the books maybe. So then, when Harry Potter first gets introduced into this world, does this world have a name other than just kind of the Hogwarts realm?
Just been branded as like the Wizarding World.
Wizarding World. Yeah. Okay. So when Harry Potter first gets introduced into this Wizarding World, he's there with Hagrid, and for some reason, to me, it seems as if Hagrid just kind of shows up and says, "Happy birthday," and it doesn't really seem to say, well, why did he come on this birthday? Why not a previous birthday or the next birthday or any other normal kind of day? And it almost seems as if Hagrid thought that Harry knew more about Hogwarts and the Wizarding World than he did. So it was strange that there's a lack of communication between Harry and the Dursleys and the Wizarding World, that for whatever reason there was that disconnect. But we see that when Harry first shows up, there are a few people who recognize him instantly and kind of know who he is, but at the same time, there's all these other people that are just kind of milling about, and we get the sense of that there's much more to this Wizarding World. There's tons and tons of these people here, and that even if Harry Potter is kind of the celebrity, a lot of people just kind of walk right past him and don't even notice or don't even recognize that, oh yeah, that's this person who's supposed to be very famous for some reason.
What were your thoughts on Diagon Alley being? Because I think it's a very interesting set, just kind of the way that it has interesting angles that aren't very something that you see in normal life.
Right, yeah. Where like normally, like let's say New York, we have very straight lines in all of the different roads and intersections, but here Diagon Alley, and even from the name being somewhat of a pun, diagonally, we're seeing very different ways that these buildings and roads and back roads are all kind of connected. And the different shops were very, very fascinating to me as well. All the different items that Hagrid and Harry go about trying to pick up and purchase. So very, very interesting way to set the scene for, well, we're just shopping to prepare for living at this school, but we're going to really fill out what are different items and different things and different people, and different, like, I guess, creatures. Maybe we even see these goblins at this bank. So we see beyond just these human type wizards and witches, and we see other types of creatures introduced there as well. So very nice way to show and introduce the wizarding world rather than just saying, oh yeah, there's goblins and there's centaurs and there's unicorns and these things, and there's more kind of just reveal it to the audience, which is nice.
I guess I've never really thought about this, how this first movie really does a good job of, it doesn't really just dump exposition on you at the very beginning. It really takes you into the world, just letting you see it for the first time rather than hearing about it.
Yeah. So it was very, very fascinating to me to be able to just watch and see, okay, what are all these things that are going to be different from this place, from Earth. And even with that point, I had this interesting kind of disconnect of, is this a place that's on Earth? Is this like a different world, a different dimension? And with the transfer going through the platform 9 3/4, this kind of like weird interdimensional portal kind of thing seemed to cement in my mind that this was a different kind of place, that this wasn't a place on Earth. But then when we have the scene of the train traveling through the landscape, and we see all these pastures and this greenery, it seemed to fit in my mind, okay, this seems like it's still someplace in London or Scotland or something. So it was kind of a strange kind of understanding of, I'm not really sure if this is supposed to be someplace in England, someplace outside of where we're normally expecting to be. So it was kind of an interesting kind of change there.
Yeah, that's... on the train we meet more characters. I think they did a very good job of casting the 3 main leads of Harry, Ron, and Hermione.
Right, yeah. We get a lot of their personalities from that first interaction, which was very fun to observe. One of the first things that jumped off the page, or jumped off the screen, I guess, to me, was that Harry and Ron sit down in this carriage together, and this cart is pushed past with the food and treats and train snacks, and the lady asks, is there anything you want to purchase? And Ron says, oh, no, I've got this bag of food, whatever it was, like some kind of crushed sandwich or something. And Harry pulls out just this pile of gold coins and says, well, take everything. And it's like, that seems a little bit fiscally irresponsible, just buying all of these snacks. But then again, it's kind of a nice show of the fact that prior to this point in Harry's life, he had no agency, he had no choice, he had no money to be able to do anything. He was just, he lived in this little cupboard, he was shepherded from location to location, everything was given to this, I guess, kind of like a stepbrother of his, and he had very little. So the first opportunity he gets to go and purchase whatever he wants, he purchases for his friend Ron, this new friend of his. He purchases all of these different foods and treats and snacks. So it's a very interesting start to their relationship, start to their friendship, that Harry was so giving in, well, I have this money, might as well use it.
Yeah, in the book it had the line of him, he was glad to have something to share. He's like, he's never actually shared anything with anyone before because he never had anything to share.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that even though he hasn't had it, he's never really had anything of his own, now that he does, he immediately wants to share it.
Yeah. Shows a very strong character trait of Harry. So that's a very interesting piece of information to throw in with the book, showing that we have that detail, which is something where it's like, it makes me want to go and now read the books to get all those little background details that you don't necessarily pick up on in the movie.
Yeah, and then there is Emma Watson's Hermione rounding out the main trio.
Yeah,
I've heard her talk before about how she thought she overacted a lot in this one.
Yeah,
I think she's pretty funny in this one.
Yeah. That first interaction definitely is kind of an interesting one. Like even her mentioning, "Oh, you've got some dirt there on your face," just kind of like you have like this. She feels superior over Harry and Ron, but then she is comfortable enough to just be like, "Yeah, by the way, I mean, I'm not going to just let you walk around with dirt on your face."
Yeah.
So it's kind of a interesting dynamic, those three, and how they interact. Yeah. One thing that I picked up on getting into when they actually arrive at Hogwarts and they start introducing some of the teachers and the different houses and how these different characters are going to be placed within Hogwarts. We see Snape, one of the teachers, one of the professors there, and him having this dark long hair, and these dark cloaks, and this very stone-faced emotion about him. You get this feeling of, he seems like he's going to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And we even get that interaction where Harry's scar starts acting up when he is looking at, and when Snape is looking at him. So we get a lot of that. This guy seems like he's going to be the bad guy. This guy doesn't seem like good news. So it's kind of interesting how they start pushing and foreshadowing towards what's going to be the antagonist, what's going to be the problems that arise within this movie. But once we realize, and once we see the ending, and we know that Professor Quirrell was the actual bad guy, I guess if we want to put it that way, was also there next to Snape, sitting next to Snape during that first interaction when Harry's scar starts acting up. So we see that it's not so much that there was some kind of problem with Snape, but it was that Quirrell, and he should not be named, Voldemort's face on the back of Quirrell, which was a strange, kind of interesting way of developing that kind of body, was with Quirrell facing away from Harry. Voldemort's face would be facing towards Harry, even hidden behind that cloth turban kind of thing. So, kind of an interesting way of setting that up. We see once the house prefects are guiding the new students to their different rooms, we have this kind of MC Escher kind of shot of these stairwells in this weird kind of hallway column kind of thing, where these stairways are rotating and moving and shifting. And later on in the film, when Hermione and Ron and Harry talk about, I guess it's just Harry and Ron are lost trying to get to class. I was like, well, can you really blame them? These stairways and these hallways are ever shifting. It's like, well, of course they're going to get lost. It's their first time here. So it's kind of a interesting little thing that they threw in with that.
Yeah, I thought the actual moving of the staircases was interesting, because the way it's represented in the books is more just like it talks about the layout of the castle kind of changing, but it's more like they don't actually see it happening. So I thought that was
just kind of like something that changes and just all of a sudden this is going somewhere else. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting here in the movie how they show the physical movement, like parts of the wall actually like retract and shift and move, and the stairs rotate. It makes me think, is there any kind of rhyme or reason to how these hallways and stairways and pieces of this castle are shifting and changing? Is there like a mind of its own to it, or is it something that's just happening randomly? Because the students are told, oh, by the way, don't go to the stairway on the left at the third floor, or whatever that location was. Don't go there. You're not supposed to go there. But somehow the stairs just happen to lead, and that's where they have to end up going into. It's like, wait, we're not supposed to be going here, but that's where the stairs had us going. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, I also like in that set of the stairway, just that area, just the pictures on the wall.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many that are just are moving in the background that they're just so small, but they're just each one of them would have had to like set up the entire set and shoot it.
Right. Yeah, and it gives a lot of history to Hogwarts as well. These are, paintings that show all kinds of different timelines, all kinds of different time periods of, this is some kind of classical era, this is some kind of Renaissance era, and we have all these different types of paintings and different types of people showing up in the paintings. So it gives the viewer a way to connect. This is clearly something that's been going on for a long time, and we also see that back at Diagon Alley with Ollivanders, that there's the date on his sign that says 382 BC, and so my mind goes, well, what could have happened in 382 BC? I wonder, was there anything in history that happened there that maybe there's a reason they chose that date?
Yeah,
I couldn't really find anything, but it's definitely lends itself to showing that there's a very long history to this wizarding world, that the Muggle world that these people aren't aware of. So definitely a very nice way to kind of build out and flesh out this area.
One thing I think that's interesting about this movie, or really the entire series, is just the way that Rowling wrote it. There are just some small things that show up early on that don't become a really big thing until like books and movies later. Like in this one, at the very beginning, you see Harry talking to the snake, and it's just like, oh yeah, he's a magic person. Of course he can talk to snakes.
Yeah.
But then later it becomes this big thing of like only certain people can talk to snakes.
Right, the parcel tongue.
Yeah, he's special because of it.
Right.
So I find that interesting, just that something that's small at the very beginning.
Yeah. That then it goes to show the amount of work and the amount of forethought Rowling had when it came to how do I want to tell this story, and how do I want to build out this world and this story. So there's little details, there's little pieces of information that got added in about Harry being able to speak with the snakes, being a parcel tongue, then led me to think about the Sorting Hat, and how when the Sorting Hat was trying to decide between which house should these different people go into, these students go into, when the Sorting Hat got to Harry, Harry's thinking anything but Slytherin, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. And so Slytherin, of course, the name makes me think of a snake slithering. So it seems as if there's these little hints that he should have been placed in Slytherin, but then because of some kind of discussion, his thought process with the Sorting Hat, that the Sorting Hat changes its mind almost and puts him in Gryffindor instead. So it made me think about this idea of what is the thought process of the Sorting Hat? How is it deciding? Is there this discussion that is shown outside of what the movie shows? Is there a discussion outside of time that in this split second that the hat decides, is it kind of like pausing and then going through this discussion of this, which house should you go into? Is it like going through your life experiences and different things like that to make this decision? So it's kind of like a weird little thing that could this have been something that's happening even if it's not being shown?
Yeah. Well, when it was placed on Malfoy's head, it told Slytherin before it even touched, before it even got on his head.
Yeah, before it got on his head. Yeah.
So in the book, it kind of has this song that kind of explains what it's doing beforehand, and it says that it's kind of looking into their minds. So
interesting.
It's not so much a dialogue for most people.
Yeah, but it is doing like that searching.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. So like this idea of, I don't even know, like it seems like it's an item, it's a hat, but then it has like this ability to talk and think. So it's like, is this like some kind of magical creature that's like a mimic or something in the shape of a hat?
At some point they explained that it was imbued with the sort of like part of the consciousness of the 4 founders of Hogwarts.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. So we are going to see later on down the line some of these questions answered in later films and later books, maybe. Okay, so yeah, it's an interesting idea of this thing being able to look into your past and be able to kind of dive into your thoughts and see, well, what kind of person are you really? Where would you end up? Which in the movie, it seems to me that they portray Slytherin as these bad guys, as these bad kids. They're kind of bullies, and they know what they want and they get what they want, and it portrays them as this bad kind of house, and that these people don't want to be in Slytherin, and that the people in Slytherin play dirty. But at the same time, it seems to me as if, why would anyone want to be in Slytherin if you know that's going to be portraying you as a bad kind of person? So I don't know if there's like in later iterations of this story that they manipulate and change the way, well, Slytherin has more depth than just this idea of they're bad guys. They're kind of these people who are sneaky and do what they want because they know the ends justify the means, maybe to some end. Yeah. The main, like, each house has like sort of like a main characteristic attribute. Okay.
And Slytherin's is kind of like ambition, where
interesting. Okay.
But they do kind of explore more of at least Draco's character throughout, in like further future movies, where you kind of see more where he's coming, or maybe not where he's coming from, but you just kind of see more of
his character growth. And
how
he's changing. Okay.
He kind of realizes that maybe everything that he thought before might not be 100% true
or accurate. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. What you might not know this right off, but what would you say is Gryffindor's characteristic?
That's
or
bravery.
Bravery? Okay, I was going to say courage. Okay. Bravery, that works as well, right? Which kind of seems to be a very strong theme that's carried throughout the movie, this courage that Harry and Ron, when they find out about this troll that is let loose in the dungeon in this castle, that they say, well, we gotta go find Hermione, and she's by herself. She doesn't know about this troll. We gotta go find her. So definitely portraying courage there. And then we see at the end of the movie as well, when Albus Dumbledore's giving points out to the different houses, he gives points to Neville Longbottom for showing bravery and showing courage to stand up to his friends, even in the face of these are people that I know and I've grown close to over the course of this semester, this year, but they're doing something that they might not be supposed to be doing. And so I'm going to stand up and say, we need to put our trust in the teachers and the professors in the school we can't be wandering around if there's some kind of danger. So it's kind of an interesting way that I don't remember them saying in the movie, ambition or courage or bravery for these different schools, but it was definitely something that's portrayed through the characters and their interactions. Yeah, very cool. Do you know the other two houses, what theirs would be? Because I don't really feel as if
Ravenclaw would be more of like I don't know the specific word, but it's more like cleverness and like smart intelligence, I guess.
Intelligence.
And then I think Hufflepuff is loyalty.
That sounds right. Okay.
I'm not 100% on that one.
Okay.
I know that they're supposed to be good finders, but I don't know
what that means. That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like we didn't get very much from Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw in this movie of what kind of interactions and what are some of the people in those houses that are going to become more important in the story. And even there are certain points where I was just completely forgetting. I knew Gryffindor and Slytherin and Hufflepuff, and then just completely forgot. Oh wait, there's a fourth house, isn't there? Like I feel so bad forgetting about Ravenclaw, but yeah. So, but yeah, hopefully those will become more involved in the story. Those other two houses in future stories, future films.
Yeah, well, now they're doing the Fantastic Beasts movie, which with also on Newt Scamander, who was a Hufflepuff.
Okay. Yeah. So we do get in some of these more recent films other ways to look at some of these characters. Cool. Let's talk about Alan Rickman's character. Oh man, I just love that character.
You know, like just how he enters the classroom, just like immediately talking right away. Yeah.
Snape is so cool. Even though this movie portrays him as kind of like a bad person in certain shots, it's like, oh man, I just can't help but like that character.
Yeah.
And knowing some of the spoilers in future films already, it just makes me connect with the character so much more. Like you're saying, with the way he first comes into, how we first see him introduced in when he walks into the classroom and just starts lecturing, just starts talking about the lecture, the lesson for today. And of course, Harry Potter is just dutifully taking notes, but for whatever reason, Snape feels as if he's not paying attention. And without knowing the relationship between Snape and Harry Potter, I would think, for whatever reason, oh yeah, this is just another teacher that's picking on the new kid who's supposed to be this famous magician or wizard. I guess there's a distinction between those two. But of course, knowing a little bit more of the story and how he walks right up to Harry Potter and just kind of stares into his eyes, just like with Blade Runner, we get another idea of there's an importance within looking at eyes, because they talk about how Harry Potter had Lily Potter's eyes. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing that the eyes is such an important symbol within story in general. So continuing that here with that interaction between Snape and Harry Potter is very cool to see. When he was back at the Dursleys, he had a bunch of hand-me-downs. He was going to be getting the uniform that used to be, what's the kid's name? The Dursley boy? Dudley Dursley. He almost deserves that name. That's terrible. But he was going to be getting his uniform, his old uniform, and it was not going to fit him. And I think Harry even mentions it fits him. He said has an analogy or something. It fits him like
an old elephant skin.
An old elephant skin. Yeah. So later on, we see a couple of times where the robe that Harry's wearing at Hogwarts seems to be falling off his shoulders. So even there, the robe that he has doesn't seem to be perfectly fitting his character. Or maybe they just thought, we'll get this robe for him and he'll grow into it or something. Maybe I don't know. So I thought that was kind of a funny little thing that the clothes change once Harry arrives at Hogwarts and he gets these nicer clothes, and clothes that are for him but they still don't seem to perfectly fit him even then.
Yeah.
So it was a little thing.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. One thing to keep from the book, is the robes, because like in later movies they sort of change to where the students are able to wear more of their normal street clothes,
modern clothes, clothes. Okay.
Sometimes,
casual
but then they also
clothes.
like their uniform looks more like a standard English boarding school with like the khakis
like
and the tucked-in shirt and
gotcha.
vest. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, because in this first movie, getting the robes and wearing the robes, and even Neville when he's holding the remember all the little thing and he can't remember what he forgot. It was his robes. You see him; he's not wearing his robes. He's just wearing like that vest or whatever. So it's interesting that in the first movie they keep these robes, and it definitely fits within the setting of we're in this magical, mystical kind of world. But then it's interesting that you say that in the later films that they move away from that. It makes me think about what does that tell us about the connection between the Hogwarts, the Hogwarts realm, and the wizardry world and the Muggle world? Is there is there a change in the interaction and the relationship between those? Is there like a better understanding between the two in later films where the wizards are stepping away from the wizarding world or not? Something to look into maybe for the future films and pay attention to see if there is any kind of change there.
Yeah, I know that the director for Prisoner of Azkaban has talked about it, his decision to, because he was like the first one that really got them wearing more of their normal clothes. Okay. And he said that he just wanted to have them develop more, or have their clothes kind of show their personality more.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, like they say, clothes make the man, or the woman, I guess. So being able to allow for agency in what clothes they wear can then tell us more about the person, tell us more about the character. So yeah, that's a very interesting point. So yeah, something to look forward to see what kind of character designs they go with when it comes to the clothing in future films. The houses seem cliquish. It seems to me like you said, they fit within a certain character. So it seems as if if you're fitting into this clique, you're going to go into this house, and then you don't really interact with the other houses, it seemed, as much. So I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting way to. I don't know much about English boarding schools of that sort of type, so I don't know.
Right.
Maybe these sort of houses are normal there, but it seemed kind of like a weird thing to do here, where it kind of separates the students and creates this rivalry that kind of, it seems like it should be a good thing, like a healthy rivalry, but it sort of ends up being not so.
Right, just
much.
By the fact of their kids, and kids, when they have this rivalry, will tend to push it far or further than it needs to be pushed. So seeing a little weird kind of cliquish kind of thing, but I think that is kind of a normal thing to have houses, or to have different, especially in these boarding schools, to say, okay, you're part of this, but I would feel that there would still be overlap and interactions between the different houses that we didn't see as much in this movie, other than the rivalries.
Yeah, here they had their classes together sometimes, but
that's true.
Out of class, they really just were with their own,
stuck with their own house. Yeah. Going back to the Sorting Hat, I had the question of what would happen if one were not sorted. What would happen if either the Sorting Hat didn't pick a house, or if you show up and then just never come forward when your name is called, or something like that. What would happen? So it's kind of I don't know if that's something that they dive into or not, but it's a question of what would happen if someone were to try and sneak into Hogwarts and then never get sorted.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like it would be hard to sneak into a magical school now.
Yeah, especially with all these different warding spells or whatever that are supposed to keep muggles away.
Yeah.
So, that's true. A couple other questions I had. going into the world building and going into the history, that I feel like I'm kind of connecting with Harry, in that Harry is being introduced into this world that he knows nothing about, but like he knows for some reason this scar is important. For some reason I'm this kind of famous person. My parents were these very famous people. They're very famous wizards, but I don't really know what the history is. So like, who is this person that we're not supposed to talk about, this Voldemort character? You know, what is his connection to Harry? What is all this stuff that we're clearly going to be building up towards? But it seems as if there's not as much told about this person, or that the students don't know about the history of this Voldemort character, that they just know he's kind of this boogeyman that we're not supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
So this war, so to speak, or I'm not sure exactly what the history is between what happened there, but it seems as if you would think that it's something that everyone would know and be very vigilant of, this Voldemort character. But it seems as if the professors and Dumbledore and all these other people are just kind of laissez-faire, just kind of, he's gone, right? It's fine. Nothing's wrong. But it seems as if they're kind of naive in some sense.
That one almost gets worse for some of the characters throughout the books, where like it really becomes almost obvious that he's coming back, and they just aren't accepting it.
Just not accepting it. That's so strange. Yeah, I wonder if Rowling talked about that kind of choice, about why certain characters would be portrayed as either oblivious or negligent, almost, of not paying attention to such a dangerous person, such a dangerous character. So yeah, it's interesting though. Going back to Snape, one of the interactions that I thought was funny was I think it was when all three of the lead characters, Ron, Hermione, and Harry, are finding information. They're trying to figure out stuff about this Philosopher's Stone, the Sorcerer's Stone, and they're trying to find information about this Fleming, I think his name was. Flamel. Okay, yeah. Fleming's something else, isn't that? Yeah. Flamel. And Snape walks up to them and just kind of like asks, "What are you up to?" And so it's like, it seems as if people will think you're up to something. And then he just kind of like walks away, and like the his robe is just kind of like billowing, and so it has that same kind of visual connection, this billowing robe, to the thing that we thought might have been Voldemort that was eating the unicorn, this kind of weird, ghostly, billowing robe thing. So again, seems to be a stronger connection of Voldemort's character to Snape, furthering this apparent evidence that Snape is this bad person. So another thing to lead to that, despite the fact that Snape wasn't as bad of a person as he first seems to be.
So at the end of this movie, there's an interesting scene where after Harry defeats Quirrell
and Voldemort.
They're all everyone's back in the Great Hall enjoying a feast, and they're talking about who won the House Cup.
Right.
And Dumbledore decides to hand out last-minute points and move Gryffindor from last place to first place.
Right. Yeah.
Which seems very interesting. Seems almost like a bit of favoritism. Which, I mean, what they did was this great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's deserving of recognition, but the polls have been closed. It's over. The voting's done. You can't give out more points.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It's like, to me, it makes me think of Whose Line Is It Anyway, where everything's just made up. The points don't matter. Whoever wants points will give points. I'm taking points from you and giving points to you. It seems to detract from the the power of the point system of who wins the House Cup and all that. But of course, what would be the end of the movie if Gryffindor doesn't win? Harry and Hermione and Ron, the main characters, if their house doesn't win, was like, well, okay, and that's the end of the book. They defeated the Dark Lord apparently, but their house still loses the House Cup. So of course you have to make it so that they win. But it definitely did seem a bit contrived and a bit forced. Of, well, we're just going to give them this just enough points to win. It's like, okay.
It really seems to kind of tie up the end in a nice bow rather than...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes for a nice ending, but it's just, like you said, favoritism.
Yeah.
Did Albus Dumbledore, did he come from a house?
Yeah, he was a Gryffindor.
Of course, Gryffindor. Yeah, I feel like I need to take one of those tests to see which house I would fall into.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that you would be Gryffindor.
Yeah,
Is that,
I am.
You would? Of course. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to add that to the comments or post another video of which house I end up falling into. Maybe. We'll see.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about was the very end, the last shot. Basically, it ends with them on the Hogwarts train station, leaving, going back to the back home, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
Which in the book it actually ends back, like they get back to Paddington Station, wherever.
I think that sounds right.
I don't know. That was mentioned at least once, but
yeah.
They get back to where the Dursleys are, and they actually pick up Harry.
Yeah.
So they have a little bit there, but I thought this one was interesting because it really ends on Harry's last line of "I'm not going home."
Right.
Really.
Yeah. Not really. Yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing that seems to be a apparent theme of this idea of home and what it makes a home, because clearly Harry's home is they're the Dursleys living under a cupboard, but that's not really what he identifies as his home. He doesn't really feel fleshed out. He doesn't feel himself there because he's being restricted and constricted, but there at Hogwarts he's made all these friends, he's built all these different relationships. That's definitely a better home, and that's what he feels is home to him. So that's definitely a good point about what is home to Harry and what makes up that thought process for him. Okay.
That will do it for this video. We'd like to thank Mel Eastep for creating our theme.
And join us in the comment section below to go over any questions, add to the discussion, and inform us of any other notes about the first Harry Potter film.
And subscribe so you don't miss our next video, where we will discuss Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
This has been FoxTales Movie Club. Thanks for watching. I'm Tony.
I'm Fox, and we will see you in the next video.